Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. So stoked for this video. It is the beginning of my mini mock draft series here for the 2024 NBA draft cycle. Now a lot of you have a question, I'm sure, what is a mini mock draft? I'm going to get into that in just a second, but what I want you guys to do right now is to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content. It lets me know I'm doing a good job here at Utility Sports. And Spurs fans, I wanted to really address San Antonio first because I think this is the perfect team to get started here on a mini mock draft. And I know I have a lot of Spurs fans already on the channel. First of all, shout out to you guys. And secondly, if you're new here, maybe you haven't subscribed quite yet, make sure to do so, okay? Hit that subscribe button. It's completely free to you. Helps me out a ton. And let's jump into that video preview. What is a mini mock? This mini mock draft video will look specifically at prospects that I think could be in the cards for the team to draft. So we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different scenarios, and then we'll evaluate those potential scenarios. In this case, for the Spurs, that's how they could use picks 4 and 8 in conjunction. And you know, most of my mock drafts on the channel have really focused on the first round. Obviously, the back end of the first round has a ton of shuffling throughout the year. So we've talked about probably 70, 80 prospects this year. But this is another good video to spend some time on players that I think your team could draft in the second round. Something I don't focus on as much, obviously, because there's a lot of conjecture and a lot of guessing with that of who's going to still be available. But in this video, I did make some time to talk about some second round swings that the Spurs could look to make, whether that's an upside swing or some guys who are ready to play right now that I could see become really good contributors for a team like San Antonio in the near future. And the Spurs are such an essential team to talk about because of Victor Wembanyama, the real direction that they have to choose going forward, which is what makes them so fun to talk about because they have picks 4 and 8. And specifically, those two selections, there's a lot of ways the Spurs could really have things play out for them in this year's draft. They could look to draft 2 guards who fit together. That's really one of the great options in this year's draft. Even though there's a bunch of guards around or near the top of the draft, they all offer very different skill sets. Nikola, more of a playmaker with some size. Rob Dillingham, an electric handle shot creating type who's going to have the ball in his hands a decent amount. Sheppard, an elite off-ball guard who can also handle the ball a bit, but that's probably not his primary role. And then there's some defensive-minded guards in here too, Stephon, Devin. So there's really a wide variety of guards that I think could really fit together. So I think San Antonio has that as an option. Picks 4 and 8. They could also look to draft 2 wings or forwards and look at their team as valuing size, length, and defense over just guard play. Something similar to what the Minnesota Timberwolves have going on, where they're a huge, lengthy, athletic team. And with Victor Wembanyama at 7'5", that's a supersized version of Rudy Gobert with way more offensive talent. You're looking at the ability of maybe formulating the best defense in the league if you draft purely for size, length, and defensive upside. They could also look to split, go with 1 guard and 1 wing. And I think there's also the possibility maybe they will look at a big man. We're going to talk about that toward the end of this video as well. Now, I'm not saying they will, but I wanted to touch on that situation. And picks 4 through 8, there's a ton of different options out here to evaluate. So let's talk about that 2 guard situation. And here are 5 of the options that I wanted to highlight here. Stephon, obviously, just reference his defensive upside. Standing at about 6'5.5" without shoes on, he is a ginormous guard prospect, someone who is going to measure in extremely well, have a ton of defensive versatility as a player who can probably guard 1 through 3, maybe at times guard up into guarding power forward, similar to what Jalen Williams does for Oklahoma City or what Drew Holiday, Marcus Smart have done throughout their careers. Stephon is the type of player who's going to have that type of defensive profile. At least that's the hope for him, is defensively you're getting someone who becomes a premier point of attack defender. Rob Dillingham, kind of the opposite type of player, obviously someone who excelled as a 3-point shooter, shot 44% from 3 in his time at Kentucky, an elite pick and roll ball handler, very comfortable making reads at the mesh point of screen actions, just a really dynamic offensive player who is going to have some real scoring gravity to him. And then from there, that's how you maximize someone like Victor Wembanyama, is putting a scoring guard with him and really just putting the defense in a bind of, okay, how do we hedge out onto the shooter? How do we deal with Wembanyama as a roll man? That's what really would put defenses in a tough spot if you're looking to make your offense really great. Sheppard could be a really great complementary piece. And I've seen so many people really annoyed with Sheppard saying, we don't want to draft a role player 3rd, 4th overall. First of all, look at some of the past drafts guys like Tristan Thompson go 4th overall, and that's a good pick, by the way. Tristan Thompson had a very good career. Obviously, his first tenure with Cleveland especially had an NBA championship in it around LeBron James. If you're San Antonio, it doesn't matter how many points per game picks number 4 and 8 average. What it matters is how many wins you get with Victor Wembanyama. So a guy like Reed Sheppard, who, yeah, maybe he's never a 25 point per game megastar, all-star every single year, but what if he's a 15 point per game guy who really helps you win a lot of games? There's a lot of value in that. Then you have Nikola Topic, who I think could be a really dynamic fit alongside Victor Wembanyama as a bigger plus-size playmaker. Someone who, again, coming off of those pick and rolls like we talked about with Dillingham, instead of winning with his scoring gravity and then creating passing lanes from there, he just naturally has those passing lanes because of how big he is. He would form a huge pick and roll combo with Victor, but also the passing skill set to pass behind him and also really use all angles of the floor to kick to the opposite side corner, strong side corner. He's just a very adept playmaker with some good inside the arc scoring feel. He has pretty good quick burst in short areas that I think is underrated and undersold at this point of time with how the draft community is talking about him. And then Devin Carter. I believe it was The Athletic had a report saying that the Spurs were maybe enamored with him. So let's talk about some of the potential pairings here, right? If they were to go with 2 guards. If they walk away with Stephon Castle and Rob Dillingham, you get this combination of a bigger guard who's more defensive oriented with some real ball handling capabilities. There's a rumor right now going around that Stephon Castle specifically only wants to work out for teams that do not have a true point guard in place. Now, that means he will probably work out for San Antonio, but it also means he might not be happy if you draft another guard with him. That'll be a question. But Dillingham does a lot of the things Castle doesn't do very well, and Castle does a lot of the things that Dillingham doesn't do very well. So I think the two of them could be a pretty interesting fit together. But in that same vein, instead of maybe going Dillingham, maybe you walk away with Stephon Castle and Reed Sheppard, where Sheppard's floor spacing and gravity as an off-ball shooter becomes really valuable around Castle. If you want to have Castle become your franchise point guard with his defensive upside, playmaking, and ball handling feel, then Sheppard's the perfect complementary off-ball player, but the reality is you still need another guy who's capable of handling the rock. Sheppard can do that, averaged over 4 assists per game this past year for Kentucky, ranked in the 90th plus percentile, I believe, as a pick and roll ball handler. So he was just super efficient in his opportunities on the ball while being the 100th percentile, which aka means the best player as a spot-up threat as well. So really dynamic with his ability to pivot and toggle between on-ball, off-ball responsibilities. It makes Sheppard a great fit in here with someone like Castle. It makes him a great fit with Nikola Topic. We also already saw Dillingham and Sheppard play very well together at Kentucky, despite being very small, which is probably why the Spurs wouldn't take both of them in conjunction, just because there would be a lot of size limitations in your backcourt. But pairing Sheppard or Dillingham, one of the two of them, with one of Castle or Topic, I do think makes some real sense given their plus size. Devin Carter, I think, could be another dynamic fit. Specifically, the one I want to highlight is alongside either Nikola Topic or alongside Stephon Castle. Devin Carter measured in about 6'2.5" without shoes on. Not the biggest prospect, but someone who uses every inch of his size well. Pause. But he does a great job putting himself in spots to stay competitive defensively, making the most of his frame, and able to really challenge shots still at the rim as a smaller guard. And I think next to someone with some higher size in them, like Castle or Topic, I think that the size limitations would not be at all problematic for San Antonio, especially with Wembanyama on the back line. Jeremy Sochan, I still think, is going to grow into a very quality NBA defender. He's still young, so he's still trending in that direction. But I do like what Sochan and Wemby are going to be for a defensive combination. And I think Carter and Castle could be tremendous together. I think Topic and Carter could be unique because of Carter's creation ability. I think one of the things that's been undersold about his game is how good of a pull-up jump shooter he is. So if you're looking at guys who have false ceilings or maybe you can get more out of in the NBA than what a lot of people are currently projecting, Carter could be one of those guys because of his shot diet in college, very self-created oriented. I think there's a lot that he can translate to in the NBA as a shot maker, shot creator for himself. So these two guard combinations, there's a lot of different ways to really split it, to look at it, especially with the parity in this year's draft. But it's very likely they could walk out with two of these 5 and be very, very happy at the end of the day. Likewise, they could do the same thing with two wings. Someone like Zaccharie Risacher is obviously the headliner in this year's draft for the wings, standing at about 6'9", 6'10" without shoes on. There's some skepticism right now which height he actually is because he was not a part of the NBA draft combine. Risacher is someone who, to me, I'm going to guess measured in about 6'9.5" without shoes on. So a real 6'10" plus with shoes, which is pretty impressive. And I think Risacher especially is going to be a quality NBA player. You know, people are skeptical of the lack of real true shot creation diet. I think ultimately, if you're looking at getting a build-around player next to Victor Wembanyama, not everyone has to be a shot-creating type of player. I think Risacher's defensive profile, his ability to space the floor, attack closeouts in straight-line drives, make him very impressive. He's got a very good rip-through, I think is very off the catch ready. And for those of you who do not know what that means, it means when someone else is creating, playing off of a live dribble, getting downhill and kicking the ball out, Risacher, not only is he just a catch and shoot guy, but he's also able to catch, read where his defender is, leverage that against him. If that's a baseline attack, if that's a wing drive, Risacher is just someone who is very ready to play without the ball, because once he catches the ball, he already knows what he needs to do. And I think that's an underrated skill set this time of the year. Everyone's looking for the upside of who can create their own shot, who can do this. Players who fit off of others are very valuable in the NBA. We see that every single year. Role players define playoff series at times. Zaccharie Risacher could be a real high level piece on a very good team, so I don't want to undersell his talent at all. Montez Buzelis, I'm a little bit more concerned on. Doesn't have the best first step. Positionally, there's some questions on if he's a power forward, is he a small forward? I think you probably get the most out of him playing the 4 because of that first step. And then defensively, he's made plays, but is he going to be able to consistently cut off drives and be a really reliable on-ball defender at the next level? That's going to be a big question. And then the shooting is a huge question as well. So what do you love about Buzelis? Some playmaking feel. He's not a point forward or anything like that, but he's been capable of pushing the ball in transition, making some reads with a live handle, not as consistently as you would love for someone who, again, would be a point forward. That's not what Buzelis is, but he's somebody who maybe there's room to grow with his live handle. And he's got a pretty creative dribble to him already. He likes his behind the back a ton. He has a pretty nifty crossover too. Ron Holland has a ton of upside. He's got all of the physical traits. He likes to leverage that attacking downhill, drawing fouls. I like his game a ton for a kind of, like, I don't have a better way of saying this, an FU player. Like, playing next to Victor Wembanyama, some people are going to, you know, a lot of the times, like, around him, it's going to be, okay, get Victor the ball. I think, like, a player like Ron Holland kind of strikes me like Tim Hardaway Jr. in a way. And that's meant to be a good thing, where it's like, hey, this game's about me too. And he has, like, just a way to assert himself that I think would be beneficial around a star player who's going to have as much gravity as Wembanyama does. Having guys who just go and get things done is super valuable, and Holland does that on both ends of the floor. Tidjane Salaun, someone who has public endorsement from Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, the two of them know each other. Salaun playing in the LNB Pro A right now, French League. I think has a very good existing relationship with Wembanyama. Had to include him on this list because Wembanyama has publicly stated that he knows Salaun works really hard and that he would welcome him on his team, basically. So I had to include him on here. Has very good size, frame, athletic traits to boot, and obviously a jump shot is still a work in progress, but something that a lot of people have been willing to bet on so far. Dalton Connect, a shooter. I'm not sure if I would love to see him be pick number 8 or not for San Antonio. I like his game. I just think San Antonio could do better with some of their options. And Cody Williams would be a big-time upside grab. He can play make off of a live dribble, get downhill and slash. So if you went with two wings, maybe you, assuming Risacher is not available, maybe you come away in this draft with someone like Ron Holland and Cody Williams, or Ron Holland and Tidjane Salaun. So you're getting these two bigger wing/forward types who put on rim pressure, very athletic with Holland's physicals. Someone who can jump out of the gym. Salaun is very quick and mobile for his size. So there's ways that, again, if you're San Antonio, you're looking at maybe improving your defensive side of the basketball more so, assuming that Wembanyama is your go-to 1A offensive player, which he's going to be. He's going to be their 1A offensive and defensive player. Now, do you want to build a defensive-oriented team or an offensive-oriented team? I think splitting both of those would obviously be the best, but maybe they go in with Ron Holland and Dalton Connect being your floor spacer, Holland being your defensive playmaker, downhill slasher type. Definitely some real options here for San Antonio with the 2 wings process as well. You could also look at them splitting guard and wing, where they go with any combination of Stephon Castle plus maybe Ron Holland. Now that feels a little lackluster from the shooting department, but what you do get is a lot of size, length, athleticism, and defensive capabilities, where again you're building up that defensive identity around Wembanyama. You could also go with some combination of Rob Dillingham plus Cody Williams. So you're getting a dynamic electric ball handler in Dillingham with a wing who has real upside to grow into a downhill playmaker, someone who can attack closeouts and get to the rim, finish above the rim, make reads off of a live dribble, kicking it to the corner in Cody Williams. You could also go with some combination of maybe something like Nikola plus Dalton Connect. Those 2 guys I think would have a natural synergy on the floor together, with Topic's feel as a playmaker, his vision on the floor, and the floor spacing, the pull-up jump shot of Dalton Connect, the ability to work off of screens. It would give Greg Popovich very easy offense to work into. Connect coming off of floppy action or coming off of pin downs, flares, whatever you want it to be, ghost screens. You could do a number of different things. They could have a really dynamic horn set with Topic working with Wembanyama and Connect flaring out of the action. Spain action would be really great there too. Getting Topic basically opens up your offense to whatever you want to do because of his passing feel and vision, which is why I do like him still quite a bit. Dillingham plus Connect, you get some real floor spacing, even if you want to look at it that way, and putting as much shooting gravity on the floor around Wembanyama to make his life easier as both a scorer and a facilitator in the center spot. So there's a lot of great options here, even if they wanted to split the positions, go guard and wing, and really affording themselves options in continuing their future draft decisions. Because if they do go guard and wing together here, you're not overloading a specific position. If you go 2 guards, then you have the 2 guards you draft this year, Trey Jones. You also have Devin Vassell, who's kind of a wing guard combo, right? Plays a little bit of shooting guard. Maybe you can slot him at the 3 a little bit, like kind of your Chris Middleton type of player, right? So I think for San Antonio specifically, if you don't double up at either wing forward or guard, then you're giving yourself more flexibility going into future years of what you want to add, what you need to add, and really some versatility going into future decisions. But I do think their current decisions are probably more important, just because this is one of their last opportunities, in my opinion, to have a top pick in this year in the draft, because I think Victor Wembanyama is going to be so good. He's going to start elevating this team to a bunch of winning. So this might be one of your last opportunities. And then also, you not only do you have one opportunity, you have 2 in the top 10 in this year's draft, which I think is fantastic for them. I think there's a lot of talent, a lot of good players. So maybe just drafting best players available is their best bet, which is where maybe a big man comes into play here too. There's 2 I could see them targeting. Alex Sarr, probably the first overall pick. If he doesn't go first, he probably goes second to Washington. I really like Alex Sarr's game. From a versatility standpoint defensively, I think he would be a tremendous fit next to Victor Wembanyama. Honestly, one of the most underexplored topics of discussion right now is, what if San Antonio were to trade up and go up to get pick number 1 or pick number 2, wherever Alex Sarr is, with the idea that, hey, maybe Sarr's not a true center in the NBA, but what if he's just a really great rim protecting power forward? And you look at some of the best teams in the league right now, the value of size, the value of rim protection, stopping shots in the paint. If you have Alex Sarr alongside Victor Wembanyama, you have so much defensive versatility, because the one thing that makes Sarr special compared to other big men in most drafts, Sarr played a lot of power forward for the NBL, for the Perth Wildcats in the NBL, and he's extremely mobile. He's versatile out in space, can flip his hips, recover, does a lot of very nice things on the perimeter defensively, while still giving you that rim protection, a lot of length with a 7'4" plus wingspan, a 9'3" standing reach. He's just a big human being, but very mobile, and he'll stand around 7'1" with shoes on. So you're just getting a very sound prospect from a size, length, wingspan, fluidity standpoint defensively, that next to Wembanyama, you don't have the concerns about rebounding as much. If you were playing Sarr at center, you'd have some of those concerns, but with Sarr and some of his offensive game and the combined rebounding of Sarr and Wembanyama, you're going to be able to really out-lengthen and beat teams. Donovan Clingan, I think, to be honest, this is a testament to how good Wembanyama is, by the way. I think every player I've named would be a great fit with Wembanyama, because he is that good. He is super versatile, can run any defensive scheme you really want him to. Offensively, I think you could use him as a high man and a high-low. You could use him as a low man and a high-low. You can use him as a pick-and-roll ball handler. You can use him as a pick-and-roll roll man. You can use him as a pick-and-roll popper. He does anything and everything you need him to, which is why this draft is so important, because it's basically deciding how you want to continue using him most often and most frequently. Obviously, you're not pigeonholing him or making him do just one thing, but how do you want to surround him? And I think that's why this draft is so important, which is why I wanted to start with the Spurs in the mini mock series, because this is so fascinating. Donovan Clingan's a great prospect. I like Donovan Clingan a lot. And if the Spurs wanted to, they could take him, and Victor Wembanyama is good enough to make it work. Victor Wembanyama could guard fours. Now, we did see, though, this year that he was most effective as a 5, but I think the big thing with that is he was playing with Zach Collins, okay? Donovan Clingan, I think, will be a better player in the NBA than Zach Collins, pretty substantially on the defensive end of the floor, especially. I think he'll be a much better rebounder than Collins, a much better true anchor than Collins, which really frees Wembanyama up to be a roamer and go out and make a ton of defensive plays. Whereas we've also seen, though, Wembanyama, I think if you really want to maximize him, playing him at center does make the most sense. So even though I love Sarr, I think Sarr would be the better fit with Wemby. I love Clingan too, but I just don't think that's the way that the Spurs should likely go this draft. So what would I do? Well, we'll get to that in a second. Second round players I wanted to talk about first. Baylor Scheierman from Creighton, I think, would be a tremendous get. One thing you just can't have enough of in the NBA right now is playmaking. You think about all of the best teams in the league. The Mavericks have one of the best playmakers, period, in Luka Doncic. They also have a secondary playmaker in Kyrie Irving. The Boston Celtics are loaded with guys who can make plays positionally. Drew Holiday, Derek White, Jason Tatum, I think, has really grown as a passer each and every year. And Kristaps Porzingis has really emerged as a playmaker as well. They have Peyton Pritchard off the bench. Just a ton of playmaking there in Boston. You look at Minnesota, they have a ton of playmaking as well. Kyle Anderson, Karl Anthony Towns is a good passing big man. Mike Conley, one of the more ball-secure players in the NBA. Anthony Edwards has taken real steps forward this year as a facilitator, decision-maker. Off the bench, they had Monte Morris as well at the trade deadline. They have really valued playmaking. OKC is built with a bunch of playmakers. Even if they're not a whole bunch of point guards, they're guys who are capable of making plays off of a live dribble. Baylor Scheierman fits that. So for San Antonio, a team that could really use even more playmaking, especially with the way that Popovich coaches them, a team that always leads the league in potential assists. They pass the ball more frequently than anybody else. The more playmaking, the better. And then Scheierman, not only is he a passer, he shoots the ball really well as a spot-up guy. He's NBA ready. He steps in. He would play right away, fit into their rotation. And honestly, I think he'd be an upgrade in their rotation over certain other players on the roster right now. So Scheierman, to me, stands out. Tyler Kolek makes some sense as well, where let's say the Spurs don't elect to take a guard, or maybe they only take one guard in this draft. If Tyler Kolek's there for them at pick number 35, feels pretty safe because he's a very smart ball handler, decision maker, very sound. He's going to be able to get himself to spots on the floor where he's going to be able to maximize Victor Wembanyama in the pocket, or maybe a kick out to the opposite side corner. I think that Kolek, unlike Nikola Topic, Kolek's a little bit more reliant on like the actual roll man getting open. And I think part of that is a byproduct of his size, but I still do like Kolek's overall feel as a facilitator. Adem Bona could be a unique defensive big man for them as an off-the-bench piece. I could see them taking him at pick 35 from hey, let's get a long-term backup center behind Victor who we can trust. Bronny James would be a project piece for them. And this is a real question for San Antonio Spurs fans. Do you guys want to draft a project in the second round, someone like they took last year in CD Sissoko, who's probably not ready to give you real NBA minutes yet, like a Bronny James? Or do you want to take someone like a Baylor Scheierman, Tyler Kolek, Adem Bona, who are a little bit more NBA ready, probably fit into actual roles pretty quickly into their career? For me, I think drafting guys who have roles makes sense because that means that they're probably going to turn into pretty decent NBA players, even if the upside's not immense. For me, Bronny James, I still do like Bronny's game, but I do think that there's going to be some growing pains. So maybe he would be pick number 48, for example. Justin Edwards could be a nice high upside grab. Trent Flowers, I love his athletic traits. Some real playmaking feel from him too. I think he could turn into a Nickeil Alexander-Walker type. Someone who, with pretty good size, length, athleticism, quickness, has the defensive traits to turn into a good screen navigator, point of attack defender, while also being a very good off-ball athlete, and someone who can also hopefully shoot reliably at the NBA level. Flowers shot 41% from 3 this past year in his lone season with the Adelaide 36ers. Alex Karaban, someone I haven't talked about a ton on the channel, but someone's game I really do like. He shoots the ball really, really well. He's a very reliable wing spot-up shooter, but he also cuts, and I think that's one thing that's going to separate Karaban from some of the other prospects in this year's draft as a wing, is not only just spot-up shooting traits, but the athleticism to do other things. Defensively, at UConn, we saw him block a good number of shots and get in the passing lanes, make plays on the defensive side of the ball, while also leveraging his size and athleticism into functional usage in the half court as a cutter, dunker, spot sitter at times. Karaban played in a very pro-style offense. I've said that a lot about UConn this year. I like the way that they're coached, and I think Karaban's a pretty seamless fit into the NBA as a role player. Ryan Dunn would be like the big-time upside grab here. In the second round, someone who defensively could be arguably the best defensive prospect in this year's draft. I really love his defensive tape. Offensively, though, he just can't really score. So that's a real flaw. He's basically going to be a play finisher at the rim right now. He can't shoot. He can't really dribble. He can't play make off of a live dribble. There's a ton of work to be done. But if you take him at pick 35 or if he falls all the way to pick 48, could I see him over the next couple of years developing a respectable jump shot and turning into this, oh my God, they have this wing who can guard anybody next to Victor Wembanyama? How did that happen? That's the kind of upside Ryan Dunn could give San Antonio, which I think would be pretty unique. So let's talk about my preference, and we're back into that first round discussion, picks 4 and 8. My preference for them would be to draft 2 guards, assuming that Alex Sarr and Risacher are both unavailable, they're both off the board. I would take 2 guards. With how my board currently sits right now, I'm a big believer in Sheppard. I'm a big believer in Rob Dillingham. I don't think you could go wrong with either of those guys at pick number 4 for San Antonio, and who knows, maybe one of them falls to pick number 8. There's a chance maybe Dillingham could. There's maybe even a chance Sheppard could, although I'm very skeptical of that. I think Sheppard might even just be flat out the 3rd overall pick. But if they were able to get one of those 2 Kentucky guards, I'd be very happy. Also, if you walk away with Nikola Topic, I would be pretty happy again. Even though I think there are some flaws in Topic's game, I think the lack of real shooting gravity is going to be something that the Spurs would have to work around, and hopefully he develops in that area. I think his overall sheer size and playmaking feel is hard to replicate in this year's class. So putting that type of player with Wembanyama, I think maximizing Wemby's game, maximizing his rim gravity and his overall feel and just his overall off-ball positioning, I think someone like Topic could really do that while also still maximizing guys like Keldon Johnson offensively and Devin Vassell. And then also from the guard spot, there's a lot of options, obviously, in this year's draft, and there's just players that I like a lot in this class that I think could be really good. Devin Carter, I'm not as high on. I don't think I would be willing to spend a top 10 pick on him myself, but obviously that has been a reported rumor, so we will see what happens. I wouldn't be mad if they took 2 wings, if there is a firm plan in place that will land San Antonio some form of reliable playmaker with scoring gravity. Again, that's the most important piece here. Tre Jones is a good guard. Okay, he makes a lot of smart decisions. In the playoffs, teams are going to not really respect him a ton. They're not going to leave him just wide open, but they're going to sag off of him a little bit. They're not going to worry about him as much on drives. So if you're looking at how you want to build this team up to try and have real playoff success early in Wemby's career, it's having guys who can also do stuff off of a live dribble, score, which is why someone like Dillingham to me really stands out. Splitting guard and wing could be great, or it could be suboptimal. It would really depend on who they draft and what players they take. Like if they walk away with Matas Buzelis and Devin Carter, I'm going to feel pretty underwhelmed. But if they walk out with Rob Dillingham and Tidjane Salaun, and if Salaun hits, it could be awesome, right? It really comes down to who they take. I think Ron Holland could be really interesting as well. If they walk away with like Sheppard and Ron Holland, you get like the really safe, obviously very good player in Sheppard. I think I would be shocked if Sheppard's not a good NBA player. Just flat out, I'm going to say that. I would be completely shocked. And then looking at Ron Holland, I think that he's the upside guy. If he hits, he could turn into a really, really great wing prospect player who all of a sudden he's just slicing up defenses with his slashing, his physicality. He's going to get to the free throw line a bunch. He just gives San Antonio an edge I don't think that they have right now from a slashing standpoint. So I wouldn't be mad at that, right? I think there's a lot of great options in this year's draft, which is why I want to know who you guys would want. Comment down below what your preferred idea is here for the Spurs. Do you want them to take 2 guards? Do you want them to take a wing and a guard? Do you want them to take a big man? Let me know. Someone might even say Zaccharie. You never know what you're going to see, but I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts. I read every single comment, so make sure to leave yours down below. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content as well. Really appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.